Welcome to another episode of Newcastle Unlocked. I'm your host, Brent Sinclair, and today I'm honoured to have our special guest joining us, Mr. Sam Kennard, CEO of Kennards Self-Storage, the business that pioneered self-storage in Australia way back in 1973. And under Sam's leadership, Kennards has grown to over 126 stores across Australia and New Zealand, totaling about 100,000 storage spaces across about 920,000 square metres of rentable space. And recently acquiring 13 locations in Auckland as well. In this episode, we'll explore the origins of Kennards, how their business has navigated through decades of growth, and also just talk about the state of the market as well, how that storage business and just generally the industrial asset class and how that's working. And also how Sam and his team are taking serious interest in the Hunter region and what that means for investors, including plenty of our listeners here on Newcastle Unlocked. So thanks for joining us, Sam.
Yeah, thanks, Brent. Thanks for having me.
Our pleasure. So before we dig into the origins and stories of Kennards, there's been some pretty big news in storage land lately. We've got some big money plays. You've got GIC and Brookfield having a crack at national storage just to the tune of $4 billion. Dollars, and that's only the start of it, really. What's your take on that news? What can you tell us from the inside?
Well, yeah, there's been quite a lot happening the last few years. If we go back to 2020, public storage had a go at national storage back then, and then got spooked apparently by COVID. Warburg Pincus and others were trying to circle national storage at the same time, and it's been quiet for a few years. But in the last year or so, we've seen public storage come back and then have a crack at buying Storage King this time. That didn't work. In the meanwhile, National Storage took a controlling stake in Storage King to play mischief with that process somewhat. And in the meanwhile, then we've got National Storage and GIC and Brookfield doing things. We've also got Warburg Pincus coming in under the StoreHub brand. We have Blackstone partnering with Store Local, and we have who's the other one? Bearings Group working with Swift Storage. Okay. So and there's others in there too. So we are I think globally the flavour of the month. Australasian self storage is getting quite a bit of global interest in the PE money.
It's on the shopping list, isn't it?
Yeah.
So and what's the catalyst for all this interest in this asset class? Do you think that funds are just looking for alternative asset classes? Is it because that there's large opportunities in our market? What's really driving it, do you think?
Yeah, I think there's a weight of money looking globally for investments, and there are sectors that are not very attractive right now. Core style sectors, office, I understand it's not very attractive. So these groups are looking into more alternative classes, I gather. And I think if you were to look also at the people who actually concentrate on self-storage, in the US, for example, there's not a lot of growth. It's not a good time to be looking in the US. The occupancies are down, prices are down, the REITs are struggling over there. So I think they're probably not that attracted to deploy money there right now. That might change. And Australia's got a great track record. It's a good story. You know, the economic growth for decades, and the self-storage sector is pretty sophisticated and mature. There's quality operators. So I think that's kind of attractive. I think what people don't get from that amount of money coming in is actually how small we are. And I do think that the pond of quality assets is quite shallow. Yeah. And so they probably won't, I don't know, be able to deploy as much as they would like, or they might just sort of, exchange the marbles between themselves. Yeah. And recently, for example, KeepSafe Self-Storage has been on the market. It was bought by Blackstone in 2020, and they hit their 5-year mandate, and they've just sold it to, I believe, BlackRock.
Yeah, right. So, of course. Yeah, keeping it all in the fair. Yes. Yeah. So circling back to the Kennard story. So can you talk us through some of the origins of the business and how you came to be at the helm of the business?
Yeah, well, so I think the best is to go back to my grandfather, who started the hire company 70-something years ago. And my dad, and just to do the short version, but my dad took over from him, and was partnering with his brother in the hire business. And my dad was very entrepreneurial, and one of the things that he did In the 70s, after going to the US and seeing storage when he was over there for a work trip for the hire company, was he discovered storage in Los Angeles when one of his equipment rental buddies showed him some storage. So he came back and built it in 1973 in the back of the Kennards hire branch in Moorebank. And that was the first one that we did. It was very much a side hustle. It was very much, an experiment. But it's something that twigged in my dad's mind at the time. So this is a really good idea. And so came back. He didn't ask any market research agents to tell if it was a good idea. He just went and built them.
Why not?
From there it went from there. And it took a while. The focus in the family business was mostly the hire company. And it was through the 80s that they started to add a bit more storage. I joined in 91 and we had 8 properties in 1991.
8, yeah.
Yeah. And so it was, so from 73 to 81, we'd only done 8 properties. So it just shows how much of a sort of a side business it was to the family. At that time, then my dad sold his interest of the hire company to my uncle, his partner, like his business partner, and it was the year I joined, and then we started to focus on the storage company. So and to the bit that elevated me to the CEO was in late 1994 when my dad decided he didn't want to do that job anymore, and he came to me and said, "I'm resigning. You're going to take over." I was like, "Okay, that's good." I thought I'd get a bit of notice, but it was literally December 1994, and he said, "I'm moving to Aspen. I'm going to get out of your way. I'm going to move to the US. I'm going to go skiing in Aspen, and I'm leaving on Boxing Day." And it was like literally a few weeks, and he said, "You better find a manager to run this joint, and you can go into my office."
Merry Christmas. And at that stage, how old were you, did you say? Sorry?
I was just about to turn 25.
And how many stores did you have then?
We had a 12 or 13. I think we're about to open our 13th or something. Yeah.
So fast forward 126, you've seen a lot of growth. And what did the early days look like in the storage business? You've been thrust into this, new role, and it was all quite new. There obviously wasn't a lot of competition.
There wasn't a lot of competition, and there wasn't a lot of awareness.
Yes. Okay. Yes.
So it was very much it still is a bit of an education program or process with customers.
Yep.
So you would get customers who'd ring, and they would get a bit of sticker fright with the price, and because most of their experience with storage was a free option, store with a mum's garage or a mate's shed or something.
Yeah. Okay.
So you had to sort of nurture them through the process of what a paid storage solution was. And so, but it was pretty unsophisticated. We had a manual accounting system. The storage buildings were very much about economy, not about amenity. So we'd ram as much as we could into the space available, make the corridors and the driveways as narrow as possible. We would use the cheapest materials, and they were pretty rough, pretty crude and pretty rough.
Yep.
But if you come forward now, like the amenities high. We put music in, and the cleanliness, the lighting, the security systems, the whole experience and customer experience and vibe is much better than it was 30, 50 years ago. Yeah.
And managing that, substantial growth and managing operationally, but also managing the expansion. What was the philosophy on growth? Was it by acquisition? Was it by development? How did you sort of charge on with that and keep all the pieces together too?
So
you put your developers hat on.
So development is in our DNA. It was the way that my dad grew, because you couldn't buy because there was nothing. So you obviously had to build. And so that's been our DNA, and that's been my own kind of method of growth as in leading the business as well. It's a matter of acquiring the land, identifying the gap, seeing how you can strategically develop it within the planning constraints, then going through the approval process and then the construction process and renting it up. And it's a long road from acquisition to mature operating performance. It's quite a long journey. But that's been in our DNA, and we're very used to it. We get to build product and quality that we like, and rather than seeing someone else do it their way, and often don't do it, in as sophisticated as we would like it. And so we don't see as much as we don't see the quality of development that we would do in terms of either location selection or as in product development in construction. Yeah.
And And what is your, criteria for new sites? And without sharing too much of your insight, but like, do you like to be located near to suburban areas? Is it, you said that it started off without any market research. I'm sure there's plenty of market research nowadays, or is it fundamental? Is it the formula not really changed?
Yeah, we've got a lot of experience now. We notice things that work and things that don't. We still go for main road, high profile, gateway locations. So that matters to us a lot. Not every self-storage operator chooses that, but we think that, and we know that they perform better. We know that they're more resilient to competition.
Yep.
We know they are easy to find for customers. These are often first-time users, so they need to be familiar. So knowing where it is matters.
Yep.
It's a retail business too. So when what I mentioned before about it being very raw and industrial, now we're a retail business. We have glass shop fronts, retail stores, selling a lot of boxes. It's a very consumer-facing retail business now, and that's the kind of location that we would choose, where you could, as they say in the US, is where you can, see a Walmart and smell a McDonald's. That's exactly the kind of location that we would prefer to be in.
Yeah, great.
Yeah.
And we were speaking before about the transactional side and, the big money plays, but from just a generally state of the market for the storage business, how is that at the moment? We talked about a little bit of competition out there. You've now transitioned. It's a bit more of a mature market in terms of the offering to the customer. What is it like at the moment? Is it, lots of marketing? Marketing would have changed dramatically over the last years. A lot of competition. You probably had none. Now there's lots. How is it all sort of, and I suppose different markets, but is there any examples or what you've noticed, especially of the sort of maturing or matured market, even how you're interacting with customers and how,
Yeah. Well, that has changed. And we used to be in the yellow pages. Now we're on Google, so, and the website. And so, I mean, it is a very active business. 8% of our customers will move out every month. So every month we've got to win back, the attrition of the loss of customers.
Yep.
And in a digital age, that means you've got to be on point with your digital marketing, your website, and then our pricing. We adjust prices every day across thousands and thousands of size codes in our business, based on occupancy, based on season, based on competition. So we'll be constantly kind of adjusting our street prices, not our existing customers, but our street prices. Will be adjusting them to win, customers every day. So, yeah.
And has there been an upswing in competition? Was it there much in the beginning between, say, the last, been over talking decades now? Has it been more noticeable recently, or how's that sort of affected you? Or is it really not?
No, it does. Yeah. It is a very competitive sector.
Is it?
I think even back when we started, it felt competitive because the market awareness was so low. So it felt competitive then too, even though there was a fraction of the supply. So now it is very much, and the operators are getting more sophisticated. They're building quality as well. There are markets that suffer oversupply. I mean, there is an information gap. It's hard to know exactly how full a store is down the road. Some investors and developers think because there are 3 existing storage businesses in an area, it must be a good area. So they'll go and build a 4th one, and that doesn't make any sense at all, really. But that does kind of happen in the sector because they don't have enough information around operating performance, and it's hard to get.
Yeah. And in terms of your customer base, like who is your customer? Is it is it the downsizer? I know I'm sure there's a myriad of different options, but you've got wine storage, you've got, on-grade storage rights. What sort of takes up the big chunk, or what's the traditional? And is it different probably for our market here in the Hunter versus, say, CBD of Sydney? What sort of?
Yeah. I mean, broadly, 80% of customers are storing furniture.
Yep.
20% are storing business items. And so the 80% are going through a life event. So it's moving house, renovating, career change, holiday, retirement, downsizing, sea change, tree change, all of those things are causing people to need storage. So they're having a life event that causes them to need storage. And it's temporary. It's not long-term. That's why we get that attrition. And that's the same mostly everywhere. There are markets that are more commercial, like the CBD markets will attract more businesses. But most of the suburbs are fairly sort of stable, around 80% being domestic customers.
Yeah, right. And you spoke about your strategy for growth has been, develop basically, or acquire and develop. I know that you've bought some portfolios recently, but generally in that buy land and develop buildings. Obviously, in the last few years, it's been elevated construction costs impacting feasibility across most sectors, and I'm assuming it's no different in storage. So, have you still pressed on with projects? Have you had to pull the brakes on a little bit? And I'm assuming your competitors are probably in the same boat. There's a whole bunch of factors, but how's that affected maintaining profitability whilst growing? Have you had to
Yeah.
pivot to more of an acquisition style, or is that more opportunistic?
Yeah, yes, it is more opportunistic, and it is we're very um, we qualify the type of assets we want to own pretty highly. Like,
Hmm.
so we had a couple of big portfolio acquisitions in our time, and Miller's Self Storage in 2004 was the big one where we went from 29 locations to 56.
Hmm.
And that was a huge leap for us. But for us, it was all about the quality of the portfolio, principally, that attracted us to run harder at those. It was the same with the ones that we bought in Auckland recently. They were very much high profile, main road gateway locations, just like we like, just exactly like as we would have built them, and high quality, like in terms of the development design. So they were very attractive for that reason. In regard to ongoing development, it sort of ebbs and flows. I don't have to deploy money, so I can just do the deals that make sense when they make sense. And so if I don't do any acquisitions for a year, it's okay. And then suddenly I might do 5 or 10 in a year, and because more of them work. So that's kind of how we do it. It is harder. Construction costs have come up post-COVID, stayed up. At least they've plateaued. At least builders are now like not putting, they're not doing cost plus necessarily. They will actually fix some prices. They're not banking on escalations and various things like that. So it has gotten a little bit easier in terms of predictability of the construction, development sector. I think the pre-2025, I think I've never seen the development sector under so much strain, as it was before this year. Like 2021 to 2024, there was so much stress in the construction and development sector. It was like really difficult to do anything. So
that's echoed across most asset classes, I think. Yeah. And turning to the Hunter, you've got 6 locations here in the Hunter. How do you see our market here? I'm putting you on the spot here, but I know you've got a lot around. But how do you see our market here and how your centre's performing? Has there been more competition that's come in now? Is it a bit is it a bit of a saturated market? Is there many gaps that you see? Broadly speaking.
So we've been here since the 80s. We've been here a long time. Our Belmonts were, I think, over in 1982. And so we've seen the market change from the industrial kind of steelworks city that it was, and then that closed, and then the leftover from that was a whole lot of industrial land, like that was not servicing steelworks anymore. So there was a surplus of industrial land. The sector went through an oversupply as people thought, what am I going to do with this land or these buildings?
Yeah.
And people put storage in them. I would say that the market, Newcastle's become quite sophisticated as a sort of a city generally. And I think the money, the type of housing you see here now, and the general amenity of the place has lifted a lot and is improving, I think, in many ways. But one of them is that self-storage has stabilised, matured, occupancies are quite reasonable. That said, that I don't think we don't see any gaps in the sort of metro market, but they would probably exist in growth areas. So, yeah.
And obviously, being a growing market here, a lot of our storage facilities that have been traditionally single level. Is there any trends that you're seeing from some of the capital cities that are trending across the country? Vertical storage, different ways of doing it. Is there anything that is vertical storage becoming more and more prevalent? Is that something that you get involved with?
Yeah, definitely. We, for us, it's a total project cost. So it's a land and building cost, and you add that together and say, what's the total project, and does the return make sense? So when land is less expensive and you can do a vaster sort of low-rise project, it's cheaper to build but uses more land, or and if zoning and floor space ratios permit, you can go vertical, and the land is expensive. That makes sense too. So we've done a seven level building in Moorebank in Sydney. We have a 10 level project on our desk now in Chatswood.
Wow.
Yeah, our Hunter Street in Newcastle West is a 3-story building.
True, it is, yeah.
We added a modern building on the front of the heritage building. We did that like 15 or more years ago, a long time ago. So maybe 20. So, probably early days for the maturity of the Newcastle market to see that, but we already had a 3-story conversion. So we knew customers were doing that, in urban areas. That's what they have to do. So it makes sense. But yeah, it'll happen in Newcastle, I think, in the urban areas if land is available and when the population gets to a level for that.
Yep, that makes sense. And generally speaking, there's been a housing crisis. Rents are going up, prices are going up. Even in our market, a lot more apartments going into our market. How does that affect your world? Is it a good thing? Is a housing crisis a good thing for you? I don't mean that but is it a fact that more people are having to compromise on the type of dwelling that they're buying, or they're having to go further afield? And is that having a direct correlation with storage, or is it all taken away from other competitors coming in? How does that sort of correlate?
So storage is quite resilient. So things that are a problem at one level are negative, but also there's a silver lining to it. So we would like velocity in the housing market. We'd like it to be moving and have more transactions happening. If there's not, but what happens is exactly what you described, is that people moved into compromised accommodation and they can't fit it's got built-in suddenly, and they've got wardrobes, or there's a barbecue that don't have a place for the barbecue. So that happens while they're kind of looking for the right place. So that's sort of the silver lining of a housing crisis, but you'd much rather see people having velocity of transactions and moving around and keeping and that happening.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
And you're saying it's a fairly resilient market. If there is like major economic events, you don't really see much jump in sort of, well, I know that the housing crisis, but if there's like, say through the GFC and those sorts of areas, did that really change it? Again, was it just pretty stable, or did it go up?
Australia is unique. Australia didn't really have the recession that other parts of the world had. And people forget that. I entered the business in a recession. And so I know that you can sit at 72% occupancy for a long time and be very frustrated. So I've been through that. In New Zealand, we bought our first portfolio there in 2007 and 8, and then they subsequently went through 6 quarters of economic contraction. And we had stores that went from the high 80s down to the 70% range. So it can happen. It didn't happen across all our portfolio, but it can happen in markets depending on what's happening there. I think if Australia was to have some an economic slowdown or a recession, I think you'd see occupancies come down a little bit. It would be worse where oversupply was, new competition had come in.
Yep.
And then everyone's kind of, trying to scramble for a shrinking number of customers coming into the market.
Yep. And that makes sense. And you touched on it from the very beginning. You've been battling with, putting storage into your friends, your parents' shed or your uncle's shed or friends and family. And even lately, we've seen a rise in micro unit strata storage and these sorts of products, and it's been even more with the industrial market going up higher. There just seems to be a lot more of that sort of product coming into the market. So it seems like there's been alternatives since inception, and there always will be. But have you seen much impact on that for storage or for business storage or anything like that, or has it really not affected your business? Or is there any sort of trends that are happening with, larger suburban homes or anything like that? That's sort of you see that trending in the current market?
With regard to like those micro industrial units that are coming out, they tend to attract a business customer and they deploy, their super fund or some, they'd rather do that than rent. A few customers might use it as a lifestyle choice where they can keep their pool table and their man cave and their Harley Davidson and on, their boat. A few will do that. And, if you look at the price of residential real estate per square metre in Sydney and you're paying $25,000 a meter or something for something, and you can buy one of these for $5. You know, why not? You know, use that as a bit of an extension of your home. But I don't think they actually challenge the mum and dad style customer, who are the short term life event, you know, style of customer. I don't think they're not the purchasers, and those people who buy those units are not really looking to rent them. And if they tried to, they would find it really hard, because they're kind of in a fragmented part of they can't really compete in the digital space and do it very well. So I don't think I wouldn't recommend anyone buy it as an investment, because I don't think, you know, the length of tenure is really short, and the turnover is too high to try and make it work. Your question about households, well, you know, I just think more people moving is good, and, you know, high density of them is good, because you get more people close to our stores is good.
Right.
I don't think there's any attributes around the housing changes that really, they're bigger, but you know, they still move if they have a life event. They get divorced, they still need to put stuff in storage. So,
yeah. And so what does the next, say, 5 to 10 years look like in your industry, do you see? Like, obviously you've got some bigger institutional players coming in with looks like some aggressive sort of growth strategies and mergers and acquisitions. So do you see, and even just from the product that you're delivering, do you think that there's just a steady pipeline? You mentioned you're not necessarily bound to develop if there's nothing to develop, or not necessarily bound to acquire, and you're a fully private company as well, which you don't have, you know, you're not beholden to shareholders, which must be, you know, must be a good thing. But what do you think for the next 5 to 10 years it looks like? What's the crystal ball, you know, and where are we headed?
Yeah, it's a good question. It could go a number of ways.
Well, we can explore them.
It could go a number of ways. I do think there's a strong risk of overbuilding, and in some areas, like, so there'll be some oversupply. And that'll cause occupancies to go down a bit, prices to come down a bit. So some investors will kind of struggle through that process, and whether they stay in and weather it and they're in 10 years, or they just exit, or and it can take a while to come out of those troughs. So I think there's a strong risk of that happening in a number of markets. You know, longer term, there's nothing structural that would disrupt the sector. You know, like, people like to keep their stuff close to their home. They're going to continue to collect stuff and grow their kind of what they have, and they're going to continue to move. So I think that's going to happen. And I think as the market awareness continues to grow, we still got a large proportion of customers who've never used storage before. And once they use it, they like it, they come back, you know, so they're sort of more like big repeat users. So as that happens, you know, the penetration in the market will grow as well. So I think consumers will get quite good deals in some sectors, because of the oversupply. The prices will be low and flat. They're probably stored quite cheaply for some time.
Yeah, well, people are still going to go through life events, aren't they? They're still going to own homes and need storage. So no, I think it's look, it's a great business and big numbers there. Like 126 locations. Geez, that's how many staff have you got? Yeah,
we've got over 400 now.
Yeah, wow. Yeah. So and now over the pond as well to New Zealand. So look, I really do appreciate you coming in and sharing your insights and taking the time whilst you're here in the Hunter visiting. And I think, you know, growing the business amazingly, especially starting out so young. My goodness. So congratulations to you, but thanks for coming on and catching up with us.
Yeah, thanks, Brent. Cheers.
Well, that's all from us. We'll be sure to keep you updated throughout the year.